I ran into the one who got away a decade after meeting her and moved in with her, but then her ex showed up. He threatened us, stalked us, and wouldn't leave us alone until she agreed to be with him. We got him to back off, but now he's back, and he wants to take our kid from us. 10 years ago, I was fired from a dead-end job and felt lost in life, so I spontaneously booked a trip to Costa Rica to soul search. I checked into my hotel, and that's when a random girl slipped a handwritten note under my door. Hey, my therapist told me I should take risks. This is one of them. She even left her room number on the note, but at first I somehow thought she just wanted to be friends. I was so down in life I honestly didn't believe a girl could find me cute enough to shoot her shot. I was going to ignore it until I felt what can only be described as divine presence telling me to go for it. And so, I made the best mistake of my life. I went over to her room, and when she opened the door, my jaw dropped. Heather was the most stunning girl I'd ever seen, and my cheeks went pink. I know so because she pinched them and called me adorable, all while I giggled like a dummy. The next 4 days were the best of my life. We laughed until we doubled over. We drew love hearts on our steamy shower windows, and even invented our own secret handshake. In those 4 days, I fell harder for her than for anyone in my life. But then came time for her to leave. Heather lived in Australia, across the world from me. In our final minutes before she left, she was crying about how she's never met anyone like me. And that's when I, without thinking, blurted out, "I'll come with you to Australia." The second I said that, her beautiful blue eyes just lit up. She went from tears of sadness to tears of joy in seconds, and even though my words weren't thought through, I knew damn well I meant them. Strangely enough, I felt happier than ever hugging her goodbye at the airport. For the first time in my life, I felt optimistic. But then 2 weeks later, she sent me a text. Her ex-fiancé was diagnosed with cancer, and she said she owed it to him to be there in his darkest moments. She said she couldn't be with me right now, and couldn't give me the affection and commitment I deserved. She said I was the greatest guy in the world, and even sent one last video of her in tears, doing her part of our secret handshake. I remember feeling my heart literally shatter. It hurt so much I felt physical pain in my chest for months. I thought it would never get better. Fast forward 9 years, I was still single, and honestly, she was the reason. I went on many dates after her, but never found a single girl who made me laugh and smile like she did. I remember accepting that I might be forced to settle, especially as I approached my late 30s, until one specific day in London. I ran into her. I had moved there a few years ago to start anew, and while grocery shopping, I spotted her across the aisle. I couldn't believe it. I kept staring at her, feeling every bone in my body start to flutter. I calmed myself down just enough to begin making my way over. But then I saw a toddler with her. My mind started racing, and I connected the dots that her ex-fiancé likely got better. They fell in love again, and had a kid. I felt my eyes start to well, and I turned around to walk away. However, that's when I heard her voice. "Alan, is that you?" I turned around so fast I became dizzy. Heather was face to face with me, smiling with that same beautiful smile I fell in love with all those years ago. I remember going red, and just like the first time we met, she pinched my cheek. We started making conversation, and the further we went, the more my knees buckled. Turns out, her fiancé never had cancer. He realized his mistake after his mistress left him, so he called Heather and begged her to come back, but she said no, so he concocted an elaborate cancer story, complete with fake medical results. He guilt-tripped her into coming back. It took her over 2 years, during which her fiancé got better and cheated on her again, but she found the strength to leave him again. By this point, however, we didn't have contact anymore. She told me that from then on, she was like me, searching for someone who made her heart dance the way I did. I remember standing there smiling ear to ear, but trying my best to maintain a neutral tough guy approach. "Oh, you think you're tough?" she told me in her sarcastic flirty tone. "How about now?" she said, softly kissing my cheek. That was it. I melted on the spot. I swear my body became putty on the floor. We went to my place that night, and it was the most amazing night of my life. We sang, danced, made love, and caught up on everything we missed. We said I love you, and meant it. On top of that, it turns out the little girl I saw at the grocery store is mine. Heather became pregnant during our holiday. I felt like the luckiest man alive when I found out. At least I did, until one day Mark showed up at our apartment, demanding to speak to Heather. He claimed he needed to speak with her alone, but I refused to leave them, standing firmly in the doorway. He kept saying he'd flown all this way just to talk, that he'd changed, and that they had unfinished business. We reluctantly let him into the living room while Lily was napping, mainly to avoid making a scene in the hallway. The conversation was beyond awkward. Mark kept talking about how much he missed his family, and how he'd been getting help for his issues. Heather barely spoke, just kept shaking her head while I tried to remain calm, despite wanting to punch this guy. He finally left after I made it clear we'd call the police if he didn't, but as he was leaving, he looked at me and said, "This isn't over. That's my daughter too in every way that matters." His words sent a chill through me, and the moment he left, Heather broke down crying. She explained that Mark had always been controlling, but she never thought he'd track her to London. We immediately called the building security to alert them about Mark. He refused to leave after that initial conversation, actually camping out in his rental car across the street from our building. I called the police, who came and gave him a warning about harassment, but said they couldn't do much else, since he hadn't explicitly threatened us. They advised us to document everything and consider getting a restraining order if his behavior continued. The next day, Heather received a massive bouquet of flowers at the gallery where she worked. The card apologized for his past mistakes and begged for another chance to be a family again. She immediately threw them in the trash, but her hands were shaking so badly that her boss noticed and sent her home early. That same afternoon, Mark showed up at the gallery, trying to talk to her coworkers about her. I confronted him outside, telling him plainly to respect Heather's wishes and leave us alone. That's when he smugly informed me that he had legal rights to seek custody of Lily since he had acted as her father for the first years of her life. This sent me into a panic, and we immediately consulted a family lawyer named Jules. She assured us that Mark had no legal claim since I was Lily's biological father, and his name wasn't on the birth certificate. Still, she advised us to formally establish my paternity through the courts to prevent any future claims. Mark's harassment escalated as he began spreading rumors in our neighborhood. He approached people walking their dogs or at the local shops, telling them Heather was unstable and had kidnapped his daughter to punish him. Fortunately, several neighbors knew us well enough to doubt his story. PJ, who owned the corner shop, actually refused to serve Mark and called me to warn that he'd been asking questions about our routines. Our community rallied around us in ways I hadn't expected, with neighbors keeping an eye out and reporting Mark's movements to us. The situation got even more serious when Heather started receiving threatening text messages from Mark, saying things like, "I'll take Lily one way or another," and "You can't hide behind your new boyfriend forever." We documented everything, saving screenshots and call logs to take to the police. With this evidence, we were able to obtain a temporary restraining order against him, prohibiting him from coming within 500 feet of any of us or contacting Heather. We celebrated this small victory with a quiet dinner at home, thinking maybe the legal system would actually protect us. But the next morning, we discovered all 4 tires on my car had been slashed in the apartment parking garage. There was no proof it was Mark, but the timing was too convenient to be coincidence. We immediately installed security cameras around our apartment, focusing on the front door and windows. This turned out to be a smart move because just 2 nights later, the cameras caught Mark violating the restraining order, approaching our door at around 2 a.m. and trying the handle. When police went to his hotel to arrest him, he was already gone, having checked out hours earlier. Worried for Lily's safety, we temporarily moved her to Charlotte's apartment, while I stayed behind to protect our home. My boss was completely unsympathetic when I explained the situation, telling me I needed to sort out my personal problems on my own time. I ended up on probation at work, adding financial stress to our security concerns. One night, Heather completely broke down, sobbing that she had brought this danger into our lives, and maybe she should take Lily and disappear so I could be safe. I held her while she cried, reminding her that Mark's behavior was not her fault, and that we would face this together as a family. We were stronger united than separated. Mark's harassment suddenly stopped for about 2 weeks, which was somehow more anxiety-inducing than his constant presence. This mysterious silence made us paranoid about what he might be planning. We changed our daily routines, took different routes to work and school, and had my friend Rowan, who worked as a security guard, check on our apartment whenever we were out. Then came the formal letter from an attorney representing Mark, seeking visitation rights to Lily, based on his role as her psychological father. The letter contained multiple factual errors, including claims that he and Heather had been in a committed relationship when Lily was conceived. Jules helped us draft a comprehensive response that systematically dismantled his false claims and included documentation of his harassment. While dealing with the legal aspects, we got a terrifying call from Lily's preschool. They reported that a man matching Mark's description had been watching the playground from the street. Thankfully, they had already alerted security before calling us. We immediately updated Lily's approved pickup list and provided the school with a copy of the restraining order. The stress was taking a serious toll on me. I started having trouble sleeping, jumping at every little sound in the apartment and checking the security cameras obsessively throughout the night. Heather noticed how ragged I was looking and suggested we both see a therapist to help manage the stress. We found Dr. Obi, a specialist in dealing with stalking situations, who helped us develop practical coping strategies while also addressing the emotional impact of living under constant threat. Just as we were starting to feel more grounded, we received notification that Mark had contested the restraining order and a hearing was scheduled. This meant we would have to face him in court again. We spent days preparing with Jules, gathering all our evidence and practicing how to respond to potential questions. The night before the hearing, Lily developed a high fever that had us rushing to the emergency room at 2 a.m. It turned out to be just a severe ear infection, but the timing couldn't have been worse. We arrived at court exhausted and emotionally drained after a sleepless night. In the courtroom, Mark presented himself as a heartbroken man who had made mistakes but deserved another chance to be in Lily's life. He brought character witnesses who described him as kind and dedicated. His attorney argued that the restraining order was excessive and based on Heather's vindictive desire to punish him for past relationship issues. Our lawyer presented the mountain of evidence we'd collected: the threatening texts, security footage, police reports about the slashed tires, and statements from neighbors and Heather's co-workers about his harassment. The judge listened carefully to both sides and ultimately ruled in our favor, not only maintaining the restraining order, but extending it to cover Lily's school and our workplaces. We felt relieved leaving the courthouse, believing the extended order would finally end our troubles. But 3 days later, Heather's sister called from Australia to say Mark had contacted her, asking for information about us and making veiled threats about exposing Heather's lies. This showed us he was expanding his harassment to our extended family, trying to find ways around the restraining order. Heather's sister Rowan, concerned for our safety, flew to London to support us. She brought documentation of Mark's controlling behavior during their relationship in Australia, including emails and texts that established a pattern of manipulation long before Lily was born. Just after her arrival, we discovered someone had hacked into Heather's email account. Recent emails had been marked as read that she never opened, and her password had been changed. We immediately contacted the email provider to secure the account and had to change all our passwords and set up additional security measures for our online presence. With Rowan staying with us, we finally felt safe enough to take Lily to the park again after weeks of keeping her mostly indoors. While Lily was playing on the swings, I noticed a man with a professional camera taking photos from behind a tree. When he realized I had spotted him, he quickly walked away. We gathered Lily and left immediately, reporting the incident to our case officer. The police identified the photographer as Marshall, a former colleague of Mark's, who claimed he was just taking nature photos for a personal project. When they checked his camera, they found dozens of images of our family taken over several days. He received a warning about stalking behavior, but since he hadn't technically violated any laws, they couldn't arrest him. I decided to do some research on Mark online and discovered he belonged to a father's rights forum where he portrayed himself as a victim whose child had been stolen by an ex and her new boyfriend. His posts contained specific details about our lives, including our home address and Lily's school, putting us at even greater risk. We hired a cybersecurity expert who helped us protect our digital footprint and remove personal information from public databases. During this time, Heather received a job offer from a gallery in Manchester that would take us away from Mark's sphere of influence. We seriously considered moving, but realized that uprooting Lily again so soon would be traumatic for her, and we'd be leaving the support network we'd built. We decided to stand our ground in London and focus on strengthening our legal protections instead. Rowan, who had experience in public relations, suggested we document every aspect of our family life to counter Mark's narrative online. We felt uncomfortable essentially surrendering our privacy this way, but compromised by keeping a detailed journal of Lily's development with photos that could be used as evidence if needed, without posting anything publicly. The situation took another turn when we discovered Mark had started dating Princess, a teacher at Lily's preschool. This was clearly a calculated move to gain access to information about Lily, violating professional boundaries and the spirit of the restraining order. We immediately reported this to the school administration, who placed Princess on leave pending an investigation. Princess confronted Heather outside the school the next day, accusing her of trying to ruin her career and claiming Mark was the victim of our vendetta. Several other parents witnessed the confrontation, and one recorded it on her phone. The school board accelerated their investigation and ultimately fired Princess for multiple violations of professional ethics, including sharing confidential student information with Mark. Just when we thought things couldn't get more complicated, Mark's mother reached out to Heather directly, claiming she just wanted to meet her granddaughter and had no part in her son's behavior. Initially, Heather considered allowing a supervised meeting, thinking it might help diffuse the situation. But during a phone call with Mark's mother, Heather noticed strange pauses in the conversation and background noises that suggested she was recording their talk. Our cybersecurity expert confirmed our suspicions that she was gathering information for Mark, forcing us to cut off what had initially seemed like a potential ally. Our lawyer advised us to seek a permanent custody order establishing me as Lily's legal father, which would further weaken any claims Mark might make. This required DNA testing and formal proceedings that would take months to complete. We began the process immediately, though we worried Mark would find ways to interfere or delay it. I officially petitioned to adopt Lily with Heather's full support. We thought this would be straightforward since I was the biological father, but we learned Mark had filed objections as an interested party, claiming he had been led to believe he was Lily's father during their relationship. This meant our case was scheduled for a family court hearing where his claims would be considered. The mounting legal bills were becoming a serious financial strain. Our community organized a fundraiser at a local pub to help with the costs. During the event, Mark showed up despite the restraining order, causing a scene and shouting that we were turning people against him with lies. He was arrested for violating the order, which felt like a small victory in the ongoing battle. Mark was released on bail the next day with an ankle monitor, supposedly restricting his movements. But he found ways to continue his campaign against us, convincing his friend Dakota, who, it turned out, had known him from university years ago, to approach us on his behalf. Finding out that my supposed best friend had been secretly communicating with Mark felt like a tremendous betrayal. I had to cut ties with Dakota completely, which meant losing my oldest friendship in London. The date for the custody hearing was finally set, but my boss refused to give me the day off, saying I'd already taken too much time for personal issues. After everything we'd been through, this felt like the last straw. I made the difficult choice to quit my job, prioritizing my family's future over financial security. Now unemployed but fully focused on our case, I devoted myself to gathering evidence of my relationship with Lily. I collected photos, videos, and documentation of our time together since reuniting. Meanwhile, our savings were dwindling rapidly with the legal fees and my lack of income. Heather took on extra shifts at the gallery while Rowan watched Lily, but the financial strain was adding to our stress. The DNA test results confirmed what we already knew. I was Lily's biological father. This strengthened our case immensely, but Mark's lawyer filed motions claiming Heather had deliberately hidden Lily from me for years, then suddenly reconnected when it was convenient. We had to prove our reunion was genuine, and not some orchestrated plan to exclude Mark from Lily's life. We thought Mark's arrest for violating the restraining order would help our case, but his lawyer painted him as a man driven by love and concern for a child he'd helped raise for several years. Some court officials seemed swayed by this narrative, noting his passion for wanting to remain in Lily's life. Our lawyer prepared us for court by conducting mock cross-examinations, but during the actual proceedings, Mark's attorney blindsided us with emails Heather had sent years ago to a friend, mentioning possibly reconnecting with me when Lily was older. This made it appear she had always known how to contact me, but chose not to, undermining our narrative about losing touch. I testified about my immediate commitment to Lily upon learning she was mine, emphasizing how quickly I'd adjusted my life to accommodate her needs. Mark's lawyer countered by highlighting my recent unemployment and financial instability, suggesting I wasn't prepared to provide adequately for a child. The judge ordered a home study to evaluate our living situation, which felt invasive but necessary. The social worker assigned to our case seemed thorough and fair during her home visit, asking detailed questions about our parenting philosophies and observing our interactions with Lily. But we later discovered through court filings that she attended the same church as Mark's mother, creating a potential conflict of interest. Our lawyer immediately filed for a different evaluator, which delayed the process, but was necessary to ensure fairness. The new evaluator completed a favorable report about our home environment, noting the strong bond Lily had developed with me and the stability of our family unit despite the external stressors. But the judge delayed ruling on our case for 30 days to review all evidence, leaving us in painful limbo. During this waiting period, Heather found photos posted online of Mark with a child that appeared to be Lily. After closer examination, we realized they were digitally altered images of his niece made to resemble Lily. We added digital impersonation to our growing list of complaints against him. I finally secured a new job working remotely as a consultant for a marketing firm. The flexibility allowed me to be present for court appearances, but the stress of our situation made concentration difficult. My performance suffered, putting my new position at risk just weeks after starting. We celebrated Lily's birthday with a small party at home, careful not to post any photos online that could reveal our location. Mark sent an elaborate gift delivered by courier, a custom dollhouse with figures representing him, Heather, and Lily. The manipulative nature of the gift was disturbing, and we had to explain to Lily in age-appropriate terms why we couldn't accept presents from him. Around this time, Heather's Australian visa was set to expire, requiring her to either return briefly or apply for an extension. Leaving the country during our case seemed risky, so she applied for a partnership visa based on our relationship. The immigration office requested additional proof of our genuine relationship, which was challenging given our relatively short time together. Charlotte, Rowan, and other friends submitted statements attesting to the authenticity of our bond, which fortunately satisfied the requirements. We finally received notice that the court would announce its decision on our case, bringing both relief and anxiety. The night before the hearing, Lily developed a high fever requiring emergency room treatment for severe dehydration. We arrived at court exhausted and emotionally drained after spending the night in hospital chairs, but determined to see this through. The judge ruled in our favor, granting me legal paternity and full custody rights to Heather and me. Mark was denied any visitation rights based on his pattern of harassment and the negative impact his behavior could have on Lily's well-being. But our relief was short-lived when Mark immediately announced his intention to appeal the decision, meaning our legal battle wasn't over. We returned home to find our apartment had been broken into, with Lily's room specifically targeted. Photos had been removed from frames, and her favorite toys were missing. Nothing of value was taken, leading the police to classify it as harassment rather than a standard burglary. With the legal victory but continued harassment, we decided to invest in a comprehensive security system, including motion sensors and panic buttons. The cost strained our already tight budget, forcing me to take on additional freelance work during evenings after Lily was asleep. Mark's appeal process began, focusing on technicalities in our case, rather than substantive issues. Our lawyer felt confident the original ruling would stand, but the process would take months to resolve. We tried to return to some semblance of normalcy, while the legal process continued, focusing on providing Lily with stability and positive experiences. I formally proposed to Heather, believing our commitment should be officially recognized. She worried about the timing given our ongoing struggles, but we compromised on a long engagement with a small commitment ceremony for now. We held a beautiful private commitment ceremony in Charlotte's garden, with just close friends attending. Lily served as flower fairy and took her role very seriously, meticulously dropping petals one by one along the makeshift aisle. The ceremony wasn't legally binding, but felt meaningful to us as a family. The next day, photos from the event mysteriously appeared on Mark's social media with negative comments about our fake family. We immediately involved the police for this new restraining order violation. The police issued another warning to Mark, but claimed they had insufficient evidence that he personally posted the photos since his account could have been accessed by others. Our cybersecurity expert traced the upload IP address to his apartment building, giving us concrete proof for the court. The judge reviewed our new evidence and scheduled a hearing for Mark's repeated violations. Mark's lawyer claimed his client's accounts had been hacked by someone trying to frame him, demanding technical evidence that directly linked Mark to the keyboard that posted the photos. The burden of proof felt impossibly high, but we continued gathering documentation of every incident. Throughout this ordeal, Lily started having recurring nightmares and began wetting the bed for the first time in years. Dr. Obi suggested these were normal responses to the stress she sensed around her, even though we tried to shield her from the details of the situation. We created an even more structured routine to help her feel secure, including special worry stones she could hold when feeling anxious. One morning, Heather received an anonymous envelope containing old photos of her and Mark, together with Lily as an infant. The words, "real family," were written across them in red marker. Handwriting analysis showed it wasn't Mark's writing, leading us to suspect his mother or princess was now involved in the harassment campaign. We met with Detective Marshall, who specialized in harassment cases, and shared our complete documentation of events over the past months. He explained that without direct threats of physical harm, legal options remained limited. He suggested we consider more drastic measures like relocating to another city, or even another country, where Mark would have difficulty finding us. My remote job offered an opportunity to transfer to their Edinburgh office, which we seriously considered. Moving felt like letting Mark win, but we had to weigh our principles against Lily's safety and well-being. Instead of immediately relocating, we decided to fight back more strategically with legal means. Our lawyer suggested filing a civil suit against Mark for emotional distress and harassment, something that would hit him financially rather than just restriction-wise. This would be costly and time-consuming for us as well, so we started a GoFundMe campaign that unexpectedly went viral after a popular parenting blogger shared our story. The publicity from our fundraiser brought welcome financial support, but also unwanted attention. Mark's supporters began leaving negative comments and making counter-accusations. However, we used the platform to document his pattern of behavior with evidence, which inadvertently connected us with other women he had harassed in the past. 5 of Mark's ex-girlfriends contacted us with similar stories of controlling behavior, stalking, and manipulation. They described the same patterns: love bombing followed by isolation and monitoring, then harassment when they tried to leave. We compiled their testimonies for our civil case, creating a devastating picture of Mark's history. Mark's lawyer immediately threatened defamation suits against these women, sending cease and desist letters that frightened 2 of them into withdrawing their statements. The remaining 3 agreed to testify if the case went to trial. During what was supposed to be a routine trip to the park, Mark's mother approached Lily while I was momentarily distracted by an important phone call from our lawyer. Lily remembered our safety talks and immediately ran to me saying, "That's the mean lady from the pictures." I was able to document this clear violation of the restraining order, which extended to family members acting on Mark's behalf. The judge finally agreed to hear our comprehensive case about the pattern of harassment, scheduling a full day for all evidence to be presented. The night before court, Heather received a job offer from a prestigious museum in Edinburgh with an immediate start date. The timing couldn't have been more challenging, forcing us to make a decision about our future while still battling our present problems. We decided Heather should accept the Edinburgh job while I stayed in London with Lily until the legal matters concluded. Being separated was devastating, especially after all we'd been through to be together. We agreed to a maximum 3-week trial separation, with Heather starting the job while I wrapped things up in London. Heather tearfully left for Edinburgh, video calling us multiple times daily to stay connected. Lily couldn't understand why her mom had suddenly disappeared, asking constantly when she was coming home. I created a special calendar showing exactly how many sleeps until mommy would return, which helped somewhat, but didn't stop the bedtime tears. The court date finally arrived, and we presented our comprehensive evidence of harassment. Mark appeared with a team of 3 lawyers and numerous character witnesses, turning what should have been a straightforward hearing into a mini-trial that stretched over 3 days. Mark's lawyers portrayed him as a loving father figure who simply wanted contact with a child he had helped raise. They emphasized the years he had spent with Lily while I was absent, carefully avoiding mentioning that this absence was due to Heather's deception about her whereabouts. Our evidence of harassment was substantial, including the testimonies from other women he had harassed, and the judge seemed increasingly skeptical of Mark's claims as the proceedings continued. On the final day, one of Mark's character witnesses, his co-worker Wendy, unexpectedly changed her testimony. She described how Mark had obsessively planned to get Heather back, including researching ways to manipulate the courts and discussing strategies to make us look unfit as parents. Mark's lawyer tried to have her testimony stricken from the record, claiming she was biased due to a recent workplace dispute with Mark. The judge called a recess to consider the admissibility of this new information. During the recess, Mark approached me in the hallway when my lawyer was absent, whispering that he would never stop until he had his family back, and that I should enjoy it while it lasts. A court officer overheard the threat and reported it, leading to it being officially entered into the record when proceedings resumed. The judge returned with a decisive ruling against Mark, implementing a comprehensive 5-year restraining order and mandatory psychological evaluation and treatment. As the verdict was read, Mark completely lost control, lunging toward me and screaming that I had stolen his life. He had to be physically removed from the courtroom by security officers and was temporarily detained for contempt of court. We celebrated the victory with a video call to Heather in Edinburgh, planning her immediate return to London. But late that night, Mark was released from detention after his lawyer argued the outburst was due to emotional distress. Concerned for our safety, I took Lily to stay with Charlotte until Heather could return. The police increased patrols around our apartment building, but at 2 a.m., security cameras captured Mark, attempting to enter through our balcony. He was arrested for breaking and entering along with violating the new restraining order, leading to multiple felony charges. With Mark in custody awaiting a bail hearing, we felt a moment of relief. Heather booked a train back to London for the following day, but Mark's mother began calling Heather's workplace in Edinburgh, telling her new employers that she was unstable and involved in legal issues they should know about. Heather had to explain the entire situation to her new bosses, who fortunately were understanding but concerned about the disruption. Mark was denied bail due to the severity of his actions and his history of violations, but from jail, he somehow convinced Princess to continue the harassment on his behalf. She approached Lily at her school, claiming to be her auntie, sent by Daddy Mark. The school's new security protocols prevented her from getting close to Lily, and she was immediately removed from the property and banned from returning. Heather returned from Edinburgh, having negotiated a remote working arrangement until we decided our next steps. But the constant vigilance was wearing on all of us. Lily was having trouble sleeping, I was constantly checking security footage, and Heather jumped at every unexpected sound. We finally agreed that relocating might be our only option for peace, and Edinburgh seemed like the logical choice given Heather's job opportunity there. We listed our London apartment and began searching for homes in Edinburgh, but the real estate market was moving slowly. We decided to rent temporarily while waiting for our London property to sell, allowing us to make the move more quickly. As we packed our belongings, I discovered a hidden camera in Lily's teddy bear, the one that had been found and returned to us months ago by one of Mark's friends. This discovery provided concrete evidence of criminal stalking, and the prosecutor upgraded the charges against Mark to include multiple felonies that could result in significant prison time. The enhanced criminal charges meant Mark faced up to 7 years in prison if convicted on all counts. His legal team negotiated for a psychological evaluation before trial, arguing that his behavior stemmed from untreated mental health issues rather than criminal intent. This strategy delayed the proceedings by several months, but we proceeded with our plans to move regardless. We relocated to Edinburgh into a secure building with doorman service, feeling hopeful about our fresh start in a city where Mark had no connections. But within days, we received a letter forwarded from our London address with no return information. The handwriting matched previous notes we'd received, sending us immediately back into high alert. We involved Edinburgh police, who traced the letter to Mark's mother. She had traveled to Scotland claiming to be on a sightseeing holiday, but had clearly come to locate us. They could only issue a warning since she hadn't explicitly violated any Scottish laws, forcing us to file for a separate protection order in our new jurisdiction. Lily started at her new school and began making friends quickly, showing remarkable resilience despite everything she'd been through. However, she developed anxiety about being separated from us, crying each morning at drop-off and checking repeatedly that we would definitely pick her up. The school counselor worked with us on transition strategies, including a special photo keychain Lily could keep in her pocket and a consistent pickup routine. Heather thrived in her museum position, quickly becoming valued for her expertise in Australian art. I secured stable remote work with a marketing consultancy that didn't require travel. Financially and professionally, things were improving. But we lived with constant awareness of our surroundings, establishing elaborate safety protocols that sometimes made us feel like prisoners of our own fear. Mark's psychological evaluation diagnosed him with erotomania and obsessive tendencies, conditions that caused him to form delusional beliefs about his relationship with Heather and his role in Lily's life. His lawyer argued diminished capacity, claiming Mark couldn't be held fully responsible for actions driven by mental illness. The prosecutor offered a plea deal requiring mandatory treatment in a psychiatric facility rather than prison. We strongly objected to the plea deal as too lenient, given the extent of harassment and the impact on our lives. But the prosecutor explained the challenges of ensuring a conviction at trial, particularly with the mental health defense. We reluctantly agreed when strict monitoring conditions were added, including a lifetime restraining order and ankle monitoring upon release. Mark was sentenced to 18 months in a psychiatric facility, followed by 5 years of supervised probation that prohibited any contact with us, directly or through others. After sentencing, his mother made public statements blaming Heather for her son's mental health issues, claiming her abandonment had triggered his decline. Our lawyer sent her a cease and desist letter threatening legal action if she continued making defamatory statements. With Mark institutionalized, we gradually relaxed our security measures and began enjoying Edinburgh. We explored the city, took weekend trips to the Highlands, and started making friends. But I noticed Heather checking her phone constantly for updates from our London lawyer about Mark's treatment progress. I suggested we both try therapy again to address our lingering anxiety and learn how to move forward without letting fear control our lives. Dr. Patel, our new therapist, helped us recognize how the trauma had affected our relationship. We'd been so focused on protection and survival that we hadn't properly processed our feelings or invested in our relationship beyond crisis management. Working through these issues meant confronting painful feelings and having difficult conversations about trust, responsibility, and our future. We received word that our London apartment had finally sold, but at a lower price than expected due to the market downturn. This meant adjusting our plans to buy in Edinburgh, settling for a smaller place than we'd hoped for, or continuing to rent until we could save more. I proposed again, this time with a proper ring and clear vision for our future. Heather surprised me by suggesting we elope rather than plan a big wedding that might attract unwanted attention. We arranged an intimate ceremony at a historic Scottish castle with just Lily and 2 friends as witnesses. Our wedding day arrived with perfect weather and a joyful atmosphere. Lily took her flower girl duties even more seriously than at our commitment ceremony, having practiced for weeks. During the ceremony, I noticed Heather scanning the small gathering nervously, a habit we'd both developed during the worst of the stalking. I squeezed her hand and whispered that we were safe, bringing her attention back to the moment. We celebrated our marriage with a weekend trip to the Isle of Skye, leaving Lily with her new favorite babysitter, Jules. The brief honeymoon was perfect, hiking, exploring castle ruins, and finally having uninterrupted time together. But on the second night, we received a call that Mark had been granted supervised day passes from the facility as part of his treatment progression. We cut our honeymoon short to return to Edinburgh, unable to relax knowing he had any degree of freedom. Mark's day passes were restricted to the London area with ankle monitoring, and he was always accompanied by staff. But the mere thought of him having any freedom reignited our anxiety. We consulted with a Scottish family lawyer about strengthening our legal protections across jurisdictions, ensuring all UK protective orders were registered in Scotland, with additional provisions specific to Scottish law. Our lawyer helped us register all UK protective orders in Scotland, but warned that different jurisdictions had varying enforcement abilities. To complement the legal protections, we installed a comprehensive security system in our new home, including cameras and a panic button connected directly to police. Lily turned 5 and started asking difficult questions about why we moved and why she couldn't see her old friends. We struggled to explain without frightening her or creating anxiety about normal social interactions. We created a child-appropriate story about unsafe people and body autonomy, teaching her that she always had the right to say no to adults who made her uncomfortable, while being careful not to make her fearful of everyone. I received a job offer for a position that required occasional travel throughout the UK. Leaving Heather and Lily alone felt impossible after everything we'd been through. I negotiated for remote work with quarterly in-person meetings only, accepting a slightly lower salary in exchange for the flexibility. We established a beautiful new life routine in Edinburgh, with weekend hikes in the Highlands, museum visits on rainy days, and a growing circle of friends who knew nothing about our past troubles. But the shadow of Mark's eventual release loomed over us, leading us to create contingency plans for various scenarios once his treatment ended. Heather's parents finally visited from Australia, meeting Lily for the first time. They were thrilled to connect with their granddaughter, but questioned our seemingly excessive security measures and cautious approach to new people. We had to explain the full extent of Mark's behavior, which they had previously only heard in abbreviated form. They were horrified and immediately more understanding of our precautions. Heather's father, a retired police officer, advised additional security measures based on his experience. He suggested reinforcing windows, installing better outdoor lighting, and creating a safe room within our home. Implementing everything would make our home feel like a fortress, so we chose the options that provided protection while maintaining normalcy for Lily. We received notification that Mark had completed 6 months of his treatment with remarkable progress, according to facility reports. His doctors noted his acceptance of responsibility and development of coping strategies for his obsessive thoughts. This positive assessment accelerated his timeline for supervised community integration. Our lawyer petitioned for advance notification of any changes to his restrictions. Mark's supervised community visits were approved, but limited to specific London locations for therapy sessions, job training, and family meetings. But we discovered he had applied for permission to visit his mother, who had coincidentally moved to Glasgow, much closer to us than London. We filed an emergency motion to block this approval, seeing it as a transparent attempt to get near us. The judge denied our motion, stating that the Glasgow visits would be heavily supervised and we were sufficiently distant in Edinburgh to be safe. This ruling concerned us greatly, as it set a precedent for Mark's gradual expansion of movement toward our location. We appealed the decision while increasing our own security awareness. While waiting for the appeal, we learned Mark had been compliant with all treatment protocols and medication regimens. His doctors reported significant improvement in his understanding of boundaries and acceptance of reality. But his social media accounts, apparently managed by friends, continued posting cryptic messages about reuniting families and never giving up on true love. We submitted these posts as evidence in our appeal, arguing they demonstrated his underlying intentions remained unchanged despite treatment. Our appeal succeeded in requiring stricter supervision during any Glasgow visits and adding an explicit prohibition from entering Edinburgh or its surrounding areas. The court also ordered monitoring of his social media activity, but enforcement ultimately relied on Mark's compliance with these restrictions, which wasn't reassuring given his history. We enrolled Lily in self-defense classes disguised as special karate lessons, teaching her how to react if someone tried to take her. We practiced scenarios without making them frightening, framing them as special games about staying safe. A year after our move to Edinburgh, Mark was released early for good behavior and treatment compliance. His release conditions included mandatory therapy 3 times weekly, medication management appointments, and electronic monitoring of his movements. We received official notification and immediately updated our safety protocols, reviewing them with Lily's school and our employers. We maintained vigilance for weeks after his release, checking in with our London contacts regularly for updates on Mark's activities. When no incidents occurred, we gradually began believing the treatment might have actually worked. We cautiously relaxed some of our more extreme security measures, allowing Lily more normal childhood experiences like birthday parties and playground visits without constant supervision. During a parent-teacher conference, Lily's teacher mentioned that a grandfather had called the school asking about her progress and schedule. The school had followed our protocols perfectly, providing no information and notifying us immediately. We were immediately thrust back into high alert, canceling social plans and reverting to our strictest security procedures. Police investigated and confirmed the caller was Mark's father, who had never previously been involved in the harassment. He claimed he just wanted to know his granddaughter, but this new family member wasn't covered by existing orders. We had to file additional paperwork to extend protections while reinstituting our safety measures. After 3 years in Edinburgh, we finally received the news that changed everything. Mark had violated his probation by attempting to contact Lily through his father, and the judge had revoked his conditional release. He would serve his full sentence plus additional time for the violation, with stricter future monitoring and permanent restrictions on his location. The prosecuting attorney called personally to tell us that during the hearing, something unexpected happened. Mark's therapist testified that after intensive treatment, Mark had experienced a genuine breakthrough, recognizing the harm he had caused. He submitted a court-supervised letter acknowledging his behavior was wrong and relinquishing any claim to contact with our family. While we remained cautious, the professional assessment suggested this was not manipulation, but authentic recovery. With this resolution, the weight that had compressed our lives for years finally began to lift. Heather's museum work evolved into a prestigious curatorial position, while my remote consulting expanded into a small agency employing 3 other people. Lily blossomed into a confident 7-year-old with her mother's artistic talent and my stubborn determination. We bought a cottage in the Scottish countryside with a garden where Lily could play freely without constant supervision. The hypervigilance that had defined our relationship gradually transformed into the ordinary concerns of any loving family. On cool Edinburgh evenings, Heather and I sometimes sit on our porch watching Lily chase fireflies, marveling at how our brief Costa Rican encounter had survived impossible odds to become this hard-won happiness. Last week, as we celebrated our anniversary, Heather surprised me with tickets to Costa Rica, a chance to revisit the beginning of our story, but this time with our daughter, and without fear shadowing every moment. When I asked why now, after all this time, she smiled and pinched my cheek, just like she did that very first day. Because we've earned the right to remember the beginning, without letting the middle define us. And as I leaned in to kiss her, I knew with absolute certainty that our love story, with all its impossible twists and painful chapters, had finally reached the ending we deserved all along.